so much talk. But as we always have Dr. Strand on, it's because we learn why these products are helping people. We learn what the science behind them, and I don't even know what to say. He has such compassion for people, to help people, and I've never seen anybody put so much time out and willing to help anyone out there. And Dr. Strand, we just really appreciate you taking your time out and jumping on Saturday morning. I know it's early for you, and we really appreciate this on a Saturday morning. So we're going to turn it to you.
I want to add one thing for the ones that have never met Dr. Strand before. He is a best-selling author. He'll share this, but Dr. Strand was a doctor, not necessarily against nutrition, but just wasn't aware of it, as most doctors are not taught that in college. So Dr. Strand will share how he got introduced to nutrition and why he incorporated it into his practice, and then why he chose the Partner.co products over them all. But Dr. Strand wrote a book called What Your Doctor Doesn't Know About Nutrition That May Be Killing You. He wrote a book called Death by Prescription, and he's wrote a book called Healthy Body. And I will tell you, they're three of the best reads that I have ever read. If you have desire to take control of your own health and dictate your own future and not get caught up with the lifestyle diseases that so many Americans fall into that trap in their lifestyle. So that being said, Dr. Strand, we are so excited you're here. We're going to turn it over to you and let you share your screen and kick us off.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And that's exactly what I'll do here. And then we're going to start here. And everybody can see this. I appreciate that, Chris and Todd, your introduction. And, I have been a traditional physician. I was trained that way. Learned nothing about nutrition nor supplementation in my training. It was my wife's illness that led me to this journey. So she's the one to blame. But she suffers from a problem of chronic fatigue fibromyalgia. And back in 1995, that's a long time ago, she came down with a serious pneumonia. And she, in spite of seeing 4 different medical specialists, placed on 9 prescription medications, she did not get any better. She couldn't get out of bed for more than maybe an hour a day. Had to have my children stay home, at least one to take care of her while I went to work for 4+ months. And that's when someone came by and shared some nutritional supplements. And my wife knew how I felt, because I told my patients all it did was create expensive urine and did nothing. But I said, you can try anything, sweetheart, because there's nothing we're doing. And lo and behold, within months, she got her health back. She got off of the medication, and I've just been researching this since that time. And so a lot of what I'm presenting today actually started in the mid-90s. And so I want to give you some science behind what you guys have been doing and building your business and optimizing weight loss with the Slenderiiz weight management system, as I put it, and give you some credibility here in what we do. But first of all, I want to just show some products, Partner.co's Nutrify system, which I am most familiar with, but I'm familiar with everything. But I want you to know, as a physician, when I went from traditional medicine into nutritional medicine, I basically, found that I had come into an unregulated market. The FDA looks at nutritional supplements like they look at foods. There is no regulation. So anybody can put on the label in the tablet, they can do anything. There is no quality control. In spite of what you might hear, I would say 80+%, 85% of companies that produce products, they're selling it to you at the lowest cost. Cost is their only concern. They don't care about what's in them, what's going on. It's just that. And I always tell my patients, don't sell your health to the lowest bidder, because they don't do any good. And I studied the medical literature. I know there's health benefits for all my patients who take high quality, complete and balanced nutritional supplements. But there is no regulation. Even if they did what they call food grade good manufacturing practices, which a few do, they only need to have about 30% what's on the label actually in their tablet or capsules. See, as a physician, when I write a script for a brand name drug, If it's 100 milligrams, it's got to be within 1% of that number to be considered a brand name drug. Well, and then even if you take generic drugs, it's got to be within 30% one side or the other. That's why generic drugs are less expensive. So the first thing I did when I got involved with PartnerCo is look at their manufacturing practices, because you have to rely on the company to do this, because the FDA does not require it. And so just simply, one thing, I'm just going to briefly go over this. PartnerCo manufacturing facility is an FDA registered facility. What does that mean? It means they have actually asked the FDA to come in and look at all their gathering of raw products, the manufacturing, the pharmaceutical process they go through, and they're not required to do that. That is something they decided. The other thing I like about PartnerCo's manufacturing is they're also qualified to make over-the-counter drugs, OTC. That's the highest quality manufacturing in the world. Now, that most companies, there might be a handful of companies that even try to come close to this, but they follow good manufacturing practices. In other words, they get, pharmaceutical grade raw products. They test it for any impurities, anything before they even start. They manufacture them just like they do drugs. And we know that that is why they can do the seal of approval. And the seal of approval is the fact that they can guarantee 100% of what's on that label is in the capsule. And not only that, but it's there at the time of expiration. Now, a lot of companies make claims. They do this, but PartnerCo actually turns their products over to third-party labs. The two most common are NSF and Consumer Lab. And they just say, here are our products. We want you to show that what we're saying is true, and that's what they've done. So you've got quality products, and as a physician, that's the beginning point. That's what I want. But I'm going to talk today because a lot of you are involved with weight control, everything, and I just thought I'd share a few facts with you. 2/3 of the adults and about 1/3 of our children are considered to be either overweight or obese. And about 1/3 of Americans right now are trying to lose weight. Another 30% are at least trying to maintain their weight. Americans spend over $30 billion with a B dollars per year on diets and weight control plans. Now, all the studies that have been out there show that 2/3 of those within a year will gain their weight back. And if you go out 2 years, 98% actually gain their weight back. And this is true for the skinny shots too. We're in there, and I'll tell you a little bit when I get into Slenderiiz, but they have the same problem, and there's a reason. So only 2% have success. So your question, first question you should be asking is, why don't diets work? Well, the main reason diets don't work is because they're a short-term solution for a long-term problem. My patients come in, I don't care what they say. Oh, Dr. Strand, I went on such and such a diet and I lost this and this, and I don't care which diet they tell you or which shots they were taking or what drugs they were taking. The problem is they lose the weight, but then they turn around and return to those poor lifestyles that got them into problems to begin with, and it's just a process of gaining the weight back. I have patients come in to me and say, oh, Dr. Strand, I kept that weight off for 2 years that I lost. No, you didn't. What you did is it took you 2 years to gain it back. You started gaining the weight back right away, and that's what we see. The majority of diets are imbalanced. They're not healthy. They eliminate carbohydrates. They eliminate fats. They do all this stuff. And the main reason diets don't work is they don't tackle the core reason we're gaining weight in the first place, which is insulin resistance. So let's just get into this. Now, we have a new epidemic, and this is beyond the pandemic. This is the metabolic syndrome, or what we now refer to as prediabetes. 25% of all adults in the US and Canada have the metabolic syndrome. But in my medical practice, I'm able to pick up early stages of this because you don't just wake up one day and you're pre-diabetic or diabetic. 25% of all adults are in the early stages of developing the metabolic syndrome, and I can identify them. I can teach you any physicians there that can pick this up. This has led the Center for Disease Control, our CDC, to project that this generation, a third of our children will develop diabetes sometime in their lifetime. If they happen to be Black, Native American, or Hispanic, it's 50% will become diabetic. So what is the metabolic syndrome, or originally called Syndrome X? This was all identified by a researcher from Stanford, Gerald Ravens. And I followed his work in the early 90s. I got onto this in 1996, started introducing it in my medical practice. And I spent 3 years studying the medical literature in regards to this. But what it is, it's a constellation of problems that occur when you become less sensitive to your own insulin. Because of poor lifestyles, that's the all-American diet and inactivity, over time, you slowly become less sensitive to your own insulin. And when this happens, you tip over into this abnormal metabolic state called prediabetes or the metabolic syndrome. You start to gain this unusual amount of weight around your middle. Your blood pressure goes up. That good HDL cholesterol starts to go down. And the triglycerides, the other fat in the blood, start to go up. And you're at significantly increased risk of heart disease and diabetes. Gerald Raven says people have full-blown medical or a metabolic syndrome have a 20-fold increase of heart attacks and strokes. Now, that's big. That's huge. You got to know what we're doing. So I'm going to go back to some of the science. How did we get here? What is happening? Why are we here? Well, you have to understand that in 1901, a theory came out of how fast sugars are absorbed and in our body when we eat certain foods. So this concept was called simple sugar versus complex carbohydrates. See, carbohydrates are simply long chains of sugar. And this theory said the shorter the chain, the faster, like glucose or table sugar, the shorter the chain, then the quicker we would absorb. But these complex carbohydrates, breads and flours, would actually take longer. Well, in 1981, a physician out of Toronto, University of Toronto, Dr. David Jenkins says, I'm going to challenge this. This doesn't make sense. Something's wrong. And so what he did is he gave his study patients a particular amount of a particular carbohydrate. And what he did is then he actually checked the blood sugar increase. And he gave them a concept called glycemic index. So let's just explain that. Well, first of all, we take glucose, which is all these carbohydrates become in the blood. And so he would watch that blood glucose go up and down when they got straight blood glucose. He then would test, this happens to be sweet cherries. So they would give them the same amount of carbohydrate, calories, all that. And in this case, it's sweet cherries. And so he would compare it to that rise in glucose. Well, what happened is that the sweet cherries went up 22% as fast as the glucose. So he gave it a glycemic index of 22. That's how he did this. And he checked all kinds of foods. And we now all are pretty familiar with the term glycemic index. But here's a graph that I want you to really understand. You want to see that look at glucose. It was given a glycemic index of 100. Okay, well, a baked potato was 85. Cornflakes are 84. You can take all the rices that are in the 80s. Whole wheat bread was 71. White bread is 70. It's actually lower. Everybody says, oh, I'm eating wheat bread. That's better. But look at that table sugar. That simple sugar had a glycemic index of 61. Look at the peach, the sweet cherries, black beans. They're all in very low glycemic. And they're sweet. So all of a sudden, we started to realize that foods like, bread, flour, rice, pasta, potatoes, everything like this actually spiked your blood sugar faster than if you're slapping table sugar on your tongue. So this flew in to the face of all this simple sugar versus complex carbohydrates. So what is the problem of going ahead? I'm going to just get a pointer here so you can see this coming up on mine. This is, we need to understand, why is spiking your blood sugar a bad deal? Well, if you look at this black line, that's your fasting blood sugar. So when you wake up in the morning, we call this the fasting blood sugar. Then 80% of our meals are high glycemic. So they go out and have a bagel, orange juice, maybe a cup of coffee. But that blood sugar goes up very rapidly. And two things happen when this occurs. The first is that rapidly rising blood sugar causes inflammation in your arteries and there's studies that through ultrasound show that spasm lasts for 4 to 6 hours after a high glycemic meal. But the second thing is you need to control blood sugar. And what happens is that rapidly rising blood sugar stimulates and actually overstimulates the release of insulin. Now, insulin is a hormone that carries or drives your blood sugar into the cell to either be utilized as energy or stored as glycogen or fat. Well, what happens when you overstimulate, it actually drops that blood sugar almost as fast as it went up. But here's critical. See what it's done? It drops into the low blood sugar or hypoglycemic range. What happens here is that if this were to allow the body go down, you not only get shaky weakness, mentally confused, but you can actually go and have a seizure. And so the body has to protect against that. Well, how does it do it? Well, this low blood sugar stimulates our stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, and all of these to drive that blood sugar back up to normal. Well, even though it's back up to normal, now you have these high levels of stress hormones in your system. What does that lead to? That leads to, we call it hyperphagia, but you have to eat again. You must eat again. It's a natural function of spiking your blood sugar, and you usually crave another high glycemic meal. And you just keep doing this day in and day out, over and over and over again. Well, it's kind of like hollering wolf. Over time, you just become less and less sensitive to your insulin. Now, it might take 10 to 12 years for this to occur, but it is important for you to know. So now let's look at the USDA food pyramid. Now that you know all this information, here's our medical community. This is what they recommend you eat. And what do they put on top? Sweets, that's simple sugar, oils, fats, use sparingly. Look at the base of your food pyramid. Bread, cereal, rice, pasta, 6 to 11 servings a day. So that's what I've told you is worse than the table sugar. So what you really should be looking at is this kind of a food pyramid. They're worse than sugars. And this is where we make the mistake. So our medical community, our recommendations have led us to the diabetes, obesity epidemics. This is the cause. We're recommending the wrong thing. So here's when I was in practice, one of the pharmaceutical reps came in and gave me this graph. This graph is 25 years long. You could go back here in my screen, you could go back another 10 years, but these poor lifestyles, look at the orange line, is your insulin sensitivity. But eventually, maybe in your late 20s, early 30s, you actually tip over into the metabolic syndrome, and this insulin resistance goes up. Well, what does the body do to compensate for that? Well, look at the green line. This is your insulin production. It goes up. And look at it, parallels this line for the first 5-10 years almost. Well, what happens to your blood sugar, the blue line? It doesn't change. So when I got into this in the mid 1990s, I saw physicians, all they looked at was blood sugar. Well, the blood sugar stays normal when you become pre-diabetic. And the problem is when this insulin production goes up, your blood pressure goes up. You start gaining this unusual weight around your middle. You start having your lipids, triglycerides going up and the HDL going down, all of these things would make your arteries age about a third faster than they should. But eventually that old insulin production, the body just can't keep doing it. So it starts to drop, and whoops, what happens? There goes the blue line, your blood sugar. And it's in this area when the blood sugar rises that most physicians diagnose diabetes in their patient. So look they've already had accelerated aging of their arteries over 12, 15 years. What's really interesting is that if you look at studies, diabetics, only half the people who are diabetic even know they're diabetic. Well, what I learned in my medical practice, I can actually project who's going to become diabetic 10 to 15 years prior to them becoming diabetic, because I know the early signs: expanding waist size, blood pressure is creeping up, triglycerides going up, and that good HDL cholesterol going down. I can tell this part, and this is where we did our studies. But here's the most important thing, is the fact that when we diagnose someone with diabetes, already 60% have major cardiovascular disease. In other words, it's over. The game's over if you wait this long. For most people, that doesn't mean they shouldn't try to improve, but I'm just telling you, this is why the American College of Endocrinology and came together in a consensus opinion in 2008, say we need to be treating prediabetes as aggressive as we do diabetes, because by the time we diagnose them, it's too late. That's why 80% of our diabetics today are dying prematurely from a cardiovascular event, a heart attack, a stroke, maybe they've had amputation or a ruptured aneurysm. 80%, that was true in 1970, it's true today. All of medicine, everything we've done has not improved it. So they looked at the worldwide medical literature. What did they say? They said, the only answer is intensive lifestyle changes. And that's what you are doing. That's why I talk to people with Partner Co. and anybody that wants to come on board, either for their personal health or as a business, that you are doing what the doctors say you must do, but physicians they're just too busy. They're drug oriented. They just want to write the script. They don't have time to work with people like you do. So in my books, I explain everything, but I want you to understand, why do we gain this unusual amount of weight around our middle? For the mantra for weight loss is, for the last half century, has been, you must take in less calories than you utilize to lose weight. We've all heard that. Well, when you tip over in this abnormal metabolic state called prediabetes, a calorie is no longer a calorie. Why? Because the muscle becomes insulin resistant first. So the muscle, why is that important? Well, a muscle normally takes up over 90% of all calories from any meal or snack and utilizes those calories as energy. Well, now the muscle becomes insulin resistant first, and it can't absorb all the calories it did to utilize as energy. And they're diverted to the fat cells of the abdomen. And another job insulin has, remember, insulin levels are going up, they convert that glucose to fat and then block the release of that fat. That's why anybody who is in this insulin resistance, which is the cause of 80 to 90% of all weight problems, they hold on to fat like a sponge holds on to water. And in my medical practice, I learned that if you don't correct this underlying problem of insulin resistance, you can't effectively lose weight. Any diet, you'll lose some weight, but it comes right back. You do this, and you're no longer resistant to weight loss, and I'll explain that as we go on. So Partner Co., what we have developed a weight management system. In fact, Deanna Latson and I came together. They incorporated into the Slenderiiz program all the principles I've shared with you because I was intimately involved early on. So you need to learn, there are 4 parts to this: a low glycemic diet, nutritional supplementation, MOA and or optimals, modest exercise, and if you want rapid weight loss, using SlenderX and Accelerate, and I'll explain that. So this is one product I don't want people to miss. and that's Pure Nourish. Deanna and we developed this Pure Nourish way back. It is the most fantastic meal and snack replacement. Not only is it gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, low glycemic, but it also contains a vegetable protein. It's healthy. They're digestive enzymes. They're probiotics. It's wonderful. But what people don't understand is that this is a behavioral modification tool. In my clinical trials that I did with my my online medical weight loss program, which incorporates all this, I would give 2 meal replacements a day, teach them how to eat 1 low glycemic meal and 2 low glycemic snacks. And Pure Nourish, 2 scoops in the water, almond milk or coconut milk, along with some frozen fruit, and all fruit is low glycemic. You can add giving greens. You can add, any of the addition, but it allows your patients or your individual people you're working with to easily experience a healthy diet that does not spike your blood sugar. Okay, we've learned what happens with a high glycemic meal, but now we should focus on this turquoise line. We again start with fasting blood sugar, but when you eat a low glycemic meal, that blood sugar goes up, but it doesn't go up exponentially. It just goes up a little bit. Yes, there's some stimulation of insulin, but it's not overstimulated. And lo and behold, it will drop down and you're hungry again, but you didn't drop into this hypoglycemic range that sets off this carbohydrate addiction. That's what this does. All of a sudden, the medical literature, then you have another meal and you do the same thing. So I teach my patients how to eat in such a way as you don't spike your blood sugar. I don't get into calorie counting or weighing themselves, doing all that in my medical practice. But this is what's important. Now, here's key. The medical literature shows if you do this, what happens is that after 1 meal, insulin levels begin to drop. And I'll show you why that's important. After the second low glycemic meal, it drops more. So just eating this way improves insulin sensitivity from a particular mechanism. Now, the other thing I recommend, and you don't have to be a superstar, but if you do aerobic exercise, and you don't have to be a marathon runner, just build up to 30 minutes of modest aerobic activity 5 days a week, not 7, 5 days. The medical literature shows that you significantly improve insulin sensitivity from a different mechanism. So you could do brisk walking, biking, hiking, swimming, tennis. It doesn't matter. The only thing the body cannot handle is inactivity. Just get it going, and simply walking 30 minutes, 5 days a week significantly improves your sensitivity to your own insulin from a different mechanism. So you see a synergistic effect. That's what's key. So aerobic activity is key to improving insulin sensitivity. Now, if you do weight resistance, you do all, that's fine. You're going to build more muscle that will utilize your calories better, but the base has got to be aerobic activity. The next is cellular nutrition. Now, optimal levels of micronutrients improves insulin sensitivity. What do I mean by that? Well, we do studies on 1 nutrient at a time. They study nutritional supplementation like they do drugs. It shouldn't be done that way because that's not how you get them. But the micronutrients like vanadium, chromium, magnesium, selenium, vitamin E, vitamin C, grapeseed extract, I mean, the list goes on and on. I can show you studies where you take these in supplementation at their optimal levels, you will see improvement of insulin sensitivity from a different mechanism. And so part of my program is to provide cellular nutrition. Obviously, that's why we developed Optimal M, Optimal V. People have been around know I like this, providing all the nutrients to the cell at their optimal or advanced levels that have been shown to provide a health benefit in our medical literature. It makes it simple. You can do three Optimal V, 2 Optimal M with breakfast, and again with supper. Now, down where you guys are, you like this product, and I support this totally. And that's MOA. And MOA is a super nutrition blend, and you can't say enough about this product. And what you'll find is now that they got the package, you can throw that in your purse, your pocket, whatever you want, and it's readily available. This lifestyle change really does not take long to do. It's not hard to do, and it's critical. So what we do is you do super nutrients for better health. I mean, it has over 35 superfoods, and they all contain antioxidants that work in different parts of the body against different free radicals. It's anti-aging. You'll see the stress down, the immune support goes up, and I'll explain that. And just cellular protection, taking MOA. Now, this is an old slide, but I like to show it. Not that I have time to go through every one of these, but there are studies in every one of these superfoods that shows a health benefit. It's all been put in MOA. Now, we don't have, so that's an old slide, but I wanted to show that to you. But what we now have done is we've improved MOA, and you're adding the healing power of mushrooms. Now, this is amazing because when this was done, they not only added them, but they brought all the levels up to their optimal level. You know, you have agaricus, you've got lion's mane, cordyceps, you've got maitake, you've got reishi, and then shiitake. All of these are in the MOA, that little packet. You've got, but here's the thing, this is so great for improving your immune system. All of these together. There's defense against prevention of the things you want to avoid, but it also improves insulin sensitivity. And the antioxidants this contains. But the nice thing is people don't realize that this little packet contains no preservatives, and that's because we developed Natrix. And Natrix is a natural preservative. It's a trademark. It took 18 months in the making, first ever natural preservative. It is patent pending blend, and it's effective. So you take this around and you're not getting a bunch of preservatives in your MOA. This is it. And so that is where we are. So what I recommend is that you decide to take MOA and or optimals. Now they work together. I think they're like Batman and Robin. But those are things that I recommend to provide cellular nutrition. Now let's talk about Slenderiiz. Now I want to put a disclaimer in here. I'm not the key, and this is something, if you don't hear anything else, the key is this is not a diet. Diets fail 98% of the time. Partnerco had no interest in developing another diet program. It does not work. It's there. You have to change your lifestyles. This has to be, you have to firmly establish these new healthier lifestyles, and you'll lose weight, but you improve insulin sensitivity. Now, it's stressful to go through, lifestyle changes. Let's face it. Well, we do have an option of Slenderiiz and Accelerate. Slenderiiz is a homeopathic drug containing 10 different ingredients. Several of the ingredients increase fat release from your fat cells. Now, they study homeopathic drugs differently than we do general medication. But in my medical practice, what I have seen is that it's improving insulin sensitivity. That's why you're releasing fat from your fat cells, mainly the central fat. Others suppress your appetite. Just eating a healthy diet that does not spike your blood sugar, you decrease your appetite because you're not setting off all these stress hormones. But Slenderiiz adds to that, so your appetites decrease. Others increase your metabolism. So there's several different ways Slenderiiz helps you get through this. And what I have found is that I can get to the health and weight goals of my patients twice as fast using Slenderiiz. And I use it in my patients, or at least I offer it to them as a tool, along with the healthy lifestyles I've explained, for until they reach their health and weight goals. Then they can go off and, by that time, they've established these healthier lifestyles, and that's fine. Accelerate is another addition because it has high doses of vitamin B12, which increase your energy and metabolism, but it also contains biotin and these aromatic herbs, rhodiola and ashwagandha, which improve stress. And people who take this love it because it just makes doing all these lifestyle changes easier. So they work together. And I'm trying to explain where those are. So it's very important to understand Partner Co's weight management system is not a diet, but a lifestyle. Now, weight loss is great. However, keeping it off is priceless. There's nothing that makes me more excited than seeing, my patients come in and say, gee, I went through this and I've kept my weight off for 5 years. And I had my own little study. When I got patients in, remember I told you 98% gain the weight back? Well, 2% don't. So anybody I've come in, I don't care what diet they went on, they said, well, I kept my weight off. I says, well, did you change your lifestyles? And 100% say, absolutely. Well, that's what you have to do because where you've been doesn't work. But as a physician, the key thing for me is the health benefits my patients get, and doing that. And so let me just see here. I just want to go back here. Let me see what I can do. Let me quickly go back. I'm sorry, I should have thrown another slide in here. I want to show you this because in the end, I did 3 clinical studies using this program that you now have as Slenderiiz. And what I did it under the FDA guidelines called an IRB. And everyone showed, we caught people in this early phase. And what we found is within 90 days, we were able to decrease blood insulin levels, and this is critical, by 50% in every one of those studies. Well, as blood insulin levels came down, what did we see? Well, the blood pressure improved. Their HDL increased, their triglycerides went down, the VLDL cholesterol and total cholesterol went down, blood sugars went down. They just started feeling better and they began losing weight. And my patient says, well, gee, Dr. Strand, what's so hard about never going hungry, feeling great, having more energy, more focus, and I'm losing weight? What am I doing? Well, we don't rely on willpower, okay? That's the key. We do not rely on willpower because that will end. Sooner or later, it fails. And so you want to change lifestyles and it just becomes a part of a lifestyle. When you eat a healthy diet, your appetite comes down. You feel good. You have more energy. We're not running down the hall and having someone come and step on a scale and, oh, yay, you lost 2 pounds this week. Well, what'll happen 3 weeks out? You either don't lose weight or you gain it back. You can't rely on willpower. This is why this system works. But I'm improving health. And like I told you, this is the recommendation of what we find from the American College of Endocrinology, those diabetes specialists. This is what we need to be doing. So anybody getting expanding waist size or their blood pressure going up a little bit, or they don't, it's something you can do to step in and help them. And then all those testimonies that we get when you see them walk up, this is what's happening. I've just explained why does this happen, and they're excited. And I can take people way out here in the insulin resistance that are already diabetic, and I tell them it takes 18 to 24 months before they get the full benefit of what I'm recommending when you're diabetic, because they're further down the line. They've been in it for years. It just doesn't happen as fast. This is 90 days. So I tell my diabetics, it's the same thing. I don't care if they're on drugs or insulin or whatever, it all works. And yeah, they got to watch their blood sugars, all of that. But that's what I wanted you to see. Now I'm going to go back and that kind of ends my talk here. And so if you want to push another record, I'm going to go here.